I will go on mute. I am getting notifications here for Discord, actually.
All right. Do you want me to go or?
Go for it. Yes.
Okay.
Sorry,
Okay.
can you see me on the camera? I might be
I
giving
can't,
you some.
when I'm in this mode, I can't see the Google Meet.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
No problem. So I'll just keep the Discord open so
Okay.
I could see messages. But yeah, I can't see anything. I just see my presentation. So I'm just going to be
All right.
talking to the void, which that's all right. We're kind of used to it by now.
You're so funny. Well, let's see what you get.
You got it. No problem. So thank you for having me. When we were talking about doing a little talk, I was like, well, yeah, I could talk about healthcare, but one of the things that I love about the walks are when we talk about, we introduce ourselves, you know, it's your name, where are you from? And then we always say, so what do you do? And I struggle. I struggle answering that because I always say, well, the short answer is I'm a nurse, but you'll see, uh, I've done so many things in nursing and I've done so many unconventional things in nursing. And the way I've gotten there, it's strange and it's weird and it's so unique. So I'm so excited to share a little bit of my story with you and how the skills that I've developed transfer into so many different career paths. Because when I hear people say, oh, I'm just a nurse, I'm like, no, you are not. It's so much more. And it has so many transferable skills that can go into so many different career paths. So I'm hoping that you can take those skills that I'm going to talk about. And if you're thinking about maybe going into a different career path or just how to maximize your role in healthcare, you'll be able to use that. So let's get started. So this is me. That's my full my full professional title with my contact information. So I am a program coordinator for pediatric cardiovascular research at Sanger Heart and Vascular Institute at Atrium Health. There's my work email address and my cell phone number. I put it right at the front at the beginning because this is kind of where I am right now, and you'll see how I got there through the presentation. And as always, I will share that at the end of the presentation, and I can absolutely be open for side conversations at the end of this, but I will put that up at the end as well. That's me. So again, what do you do, right? That's kind of how we introduce ourselves, how we present ourselves. And like I said, I really struggle with that because, well, I'm a registered nurse. But then there's all of these nuances with that because, like I said, there's so many layers to what I do. I'm an educator. I was a device rep. I'm a researcher. I'm a writer. I'm an editor. I'm a subject matter expert. I'm a coordinator. I'm an advisor, right? So you see how all of these titles, oh, sorry about that, that's where it ends, fit, but not many of these words people think about when they think about the word nurse, especially with the last couple of years that we've had, right? And going through some of these roles, I've also learned that many people don't truly know what a nurse does. So that in itself is a lot to unpack. But within these roles, like I said, I've developed this robust skill set and also how to talk about this robust skill set. So throughout the presentation, what I'll do is I'll kind of break down each one of these roles and the different skills that I've acquired through the roles, and then how you can think about your own role in healthcare or maybe different people you've met in healthcare. And like I said, I'm a nurse, so I'm speaking through the lens of nursing, but think about physicians, nurse practitioners, occupational therapists, physical therapists, dietitians, speech therapists, right? That's why it's really women in healthcare because women in healthcare do all of these roles, right? We always educate, we're always subject matter experts, we're always doing research. So, thinking about any healthcare role and how it's applicable. So, even though I'm speaking from the lens of nursing, I really want you to broaden your horizons and think about all those different healthcare roles we interact with. So, thinking about my broadest role as a registered nurse, to give you a little bit of background, I have my bachelor's degree from Moravian now university. When I went there, it was called Moravian College, which was a really weird transition that it made recently. But Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, I graduated in 2010. And my first odd stop was I had a very influential dean who recognized that I was curious and I was inquisitive. And she said, you know, if you like research, you should just go straight for your PhD. And I was like, I can do that. I'm also a first generation college student, so I didn't know what direction was up or which way to look for anything. So right when I graduated, I went from a undergraduate graduate to graduate school. So May of 2010, I graduated with my bachelor's degree. August of 2010, I enrolled in a graduate school. So I didn't stop. And I went to the University of Connecticut in Storrs, Connecticut, in the bachelor's to PhD program. And that took me 6 years to complete because I was still working full time as a registered nurse. I worked at Bridgeport Hospital. There it is in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And there's kind of my breakdown. Then this is a very typical nursing career where I did med surg telemetry for about 16 months. But then I transferred into the intensive care unit where I worked for 10 years. Was a member of the rapid response team, and I did a little stint in a PACU unit. While I was working, I also got certified in critical care. And this is really the role of the nurse that we think about when we think about nursing, or bedside clinician, medication passing, patient education, that hands-on care that's provided. And this is really my foundation, the core of who I am, what I do, and which is probably why when people say, what do you do? I say, I'm a nurse, right? Because this is the chunk of it. But while I was working as a nurse, like I said, I was still going to school. I was getting my PhD, researching, sitting on a lot of different committees, writing, editing, honing those different talents. And what's interesting is I feel like now that I can look back, it's kind of like I did everything backwards, not wrong, just a little bit backwards. Because now I'm able to look back and say, okay, so this whole time I was working as a nurse, I was kind of planting the seeds to lead up to where I was now and beginning to develop these skills, these skills that I can transfer into different careers, which we'll talk about. Oh, I don't know why I put a little spinny arrow there, but that was kind of cool. Okay. So while I was working, I also was educating. I knew I liked teaching. I liked being that resource for not only my patients and the families of the patients, but also my peers. From there, I picked up some clinical groups. From clinical groups, I worked my way into the classroom, eventually leading to a position of an assistant professor of nursing at Fairfield University. And I was there for about 6 years. But being an educator and leading classrooms, doing lectures and curriculum design for, like I said, both the classroom and the clinical setting, while being a clinical nurse and a preceptor. So as new nurses came into the unit, I was able to be their preceptor. I was able to teach them hands-on skills, orient them to the unit, be that point person. Um, that's the traditional educator role. But focus on the transferable skills. And that's really what we'll be talking about tonight, because communication. So, one of the things is valuable, right? And that patients, families, peers, students, right? So, I could be talking to in any given day to somebody who is actively dying, their family member, my coworker, and then to a student. So explaining that situation to all those different learning levels, language levels, emotional levels. Okay, so you have to be able to adjust your communication techniques, style, how you present yourself in the situation. And it sounds like, well, yeah, of course you do that, but learning that skill and being able to finesse not only your words, but your body language, your emotional language, being able to quote, like read the room, what's going on there. And sometimes the situations in the intensive care unit, in the hospital, in the classroom can be heightened, right? So being able to understand your communication techniques is so important. And that is a skill that we should be talking up as healthcare providers, Because when you go into a different kind of setting, not just healthcare, a business setting, an education setting, insert here, whatever, but having that ability to talk and to communicate and to connect with whomever, whenever is so important. I make the joke, and I think I could say this is healthcare talk, right? I say, if you would know how many people I met for the first time when they were in the bathroom, right? But you kind of got to just go in with confidence, introduce yourself, and do your thing. And that's a way of communicating, right? With respect, with dignity, and keeping your own integrity in some of those situations where you're like, I have to do this, but I have to also maintain mutual respect for myself and the person in front of me. So communication really will shine throughout all these roles. And that's really one that you want to leverage and think about, how do I communicate and how do I build up that skill? Again, adaptability, like being flexible in your situations and who you're talking to. And that kind of piggybacks on the communication, being adaptable to situations, being flexible with your situations. We talked about a little bit about emotional intelligence. And as an educator, again, that's that notion of meeting people where they are, right? So understanding maybe this student had a really bad day today, right? And maybe this wasn't their best performance. So why? And looking at the whole situation, and was it a situation of something happened before they even got to that test? Was it a patient situation? And now we're in a heightened arena of emotions, and how do I understand myself and my own communication techniques, so I'm not giving the wrong message with my body, with my words, and they are taking home what they need to take home and leaving what they don't. So that idea of emotional intelligence is also really important when you're educating or talking to people. Conflict resolution. Okay, this came up as an educator a lot for students when they were, okay, I'll say it, like nitpicking grades, right? Or not happy with their own performance, within themselves, group work, you name it, it happens, right? So, and then again, even in the professional setting, it happens at healthcare or and beyond. So thinking about how, as a professional, what is my conflict resolution style? Okay, do you go in and are you a mediator? Do you ask people to listen to each other? Do you get both sides of the story separately and then bring the story together? But having that as an understanding your own style of conflict resolution while you're marketing yourself and saying that that is a skill that I have is so valuable, because a lot of people, and honestly myself included, stray away from conflict, right? I'll deal with it if and when I need to, but it's uncomfortable, right? It's not a pleasurable situation. No one wants to be in an argument with people. I shouldn't say no one, right? But most people don't. So understanding where you are on that continuum of conflict and how you can best resolve them and push a situation forward into resolution is really important, and be able to speak to that. And we'll talk a little bit about time management, because that will is another thread, much like communication. That's a thread that goes throughout all of these roles. But understanding how you manage time. And it comes to little things like understanding yourself. Are you a morning person? Are you a night person? Do you work well under pressure or do you not? And none of these answers are incorrect, right? Like I'll often hear people say like, "Oh, I can't wake up early," or "I really want to wake up early, I just can't." And my answer is, so don't, right? Find what works for you and own it and make it work for yourself, right? So it's a lot of these transferable skills are all about selling how well you can do something and how well you know yourself and how well you make these skills work for you, because we all have these skills. It's just how they make them work for yourself. And a little thing that's a little bit unique to this role is being in oral presentations. So if you are thinking about transferring in or out of healthcare or into a different role, how you present yourself, how you use your bodies when you're talking, developing PowerPoints or more interactive kind of presentation. So this is a very cut and dry presentation, right? Just me talking with some slides. But there's so many different types of software out there, like Prezi. Prezi is super interactive. Now that there's great tools like Zoom, you can use surveys during Zoom, whiteboards during Zoom. So if you're doing an online presentation, if you're working remotely, if you're providing education or a presentation, really look into different types of software that's available to communicate your message in the most interactive way for your audience. So another role that we'll talk about is the role of an advisor, and both an academic and a clinical advisor. So I advise both undergraduate and graduate students through academic and coursework. But so that's a pretty cut and dry role. That's just making sure everyone's on track to graduate and or present their scholarly projects so that they graduate. Um, but the clinical side of things, I'm a part of a national critical care work group where I work with about 10 to 12 critical care nurses from across the country. And pre-COVID, we used to get together in person. Now we're remote, but we sit and once a month and we talk about issues in critical care. We communicate what our different hospitals are doing, what we're doing. So it's these, again, these communication techniques, it's meeting different people, it's listening to the stories of others. So again, that empathetic listening is what I put at the top of the list here, because in both academic and clinical work, oh, and I threw that research oversight because that's being more of an advisor to a research group at the professional level. So what problems are people running into? So I can't fit my courses in, or our unit is having this issue, or this research study is stuck here. And it's not necessarily solving things right away, but it's listening to the problem with an open eyes and open ears. And sometimes when you listen and listen, the problems begin to work themselves out. So it's really understanding when to listen, when to talk, when to stop talking, and having that sense of, I'm here, I'm listening, let's talk, right? That empathetic listening. And also being able to help who you're advising with both long term and short term goal setting. There's that acronym, a SMART goal, right? Goal should be SMART. So sustainable. Oh, I should have written this down. Measurable, achievable, realistic.
Realistic.
There we go. And time based, right?
Yeah.
So great. So that's a great acronym to remember, SMART, when you're setting your goals. So coaching people or working with goal setting, that's a really great acronym. I really love that because it's so tangible. And again, that goes right next to understanding priorities, because if you this is what came up with a lot about with the research oversight, you would say, well, this is really important to the group or to one side of the group, but it's not important to the organization as a whole. So when you are talking about being an advisor or transferring your skills into a different role as a nurse, right, you understand how to prioritize. And that might be your tasks for the day, that might be the severity of something. I know how to move things from step 3 up to step 1. So understanding the prioritization and people's prioritization. So it's kind of that duality of prioritization is a really important transferable skill to talk up. Kind of goes hand in hand with strategic planning, that global awareness. So that is really, as an advisor, so as a nursing advisor, as a nurse, right, you really have that full picture of what's going on with your patient on the unit, in the hospital. So that is that full picture, kind of zoomed out perspective that you really want to talk up. And of course, collaboration, right? We're working with everyone. So you can see on the advisor side how by providing advisement, you really have to collaborate with different, well, on the university side, different university departments, in the hospital side, as a nurse, you are, or healthcare provider, you are collaborating with all different types of disciplines. So that collaboration piece, and again, going back to communication, right? You're not going to speak as a nurse. I'm not going to speak to the speech therapist the same way I'm speaking to the physician or having the same conversation necessarily, right? As to the patient, as to the patient's family members, as to the patient's children, right? So it's that whole patient family care that makes the care move forward. So thinking about that notion of collaboration. Okay, my writing and editing roles, I write both professionally and creatively. So I've been on editorial advisory boards and served as a peer reviewer. And if writing and editing, right, you write your nursing notes, right, but also professionally. And editing helps my writing, which is why I was so involved in editing. Um, and I love creative writing. So, being a university employee, I took advantage of taking free classes or part of the tuition reimbursement, right? And I took classes towards an MFA in creative writing and fiction. But it also gave me the opportunity, again, to collaborate, to hear the stories of others and listen about journalism and creative journalism. Long story short, I put that sana there. So sana is actually the Latin word to heal. So I founded a creative writing journal for nurses. So I made Sana, and it stands for the Self Achievement Through Nursing Art. And it's a live website, and it's through the library. So again, collaborating with the librarians, with different nurse authors to make a space for nurse writers to publish their work. And we publish poems and long prose, short stories, fiction, nonfiction, you name it, it's in there. And we've done one edition so far. And even though I'm not at the university anymore, I still am in contact with the dean there to have subsequent editions come out. But as a writer and as a nurse writer, right, you have to maintain that creativity and also encourage patients to not lose their creativity while they're sick and in the hospital. That is a great outlet for patients to express themselves in a very non-creative environment, right? But when you are writing, WRGHT, to have that tact in explaining to people, to have brevity, right? Brevity is being able to express yourself in not a lot of words, not being long-winded. Sometimes, and as we know, right, the attention span of people is really, really short. So say what you need to say and get out of there, right? I'm just going to head down to the bottom because that idea of reciprocal feedback, and I think whole healthcare providers own this skill, and not just healthcare providers but beyond, right? And understanding what that is, right? So you tell me, how is this going, and then I'll tell you how it's going, right? And being open to not only giving feedback but receiving feedback, and you almost have to be in that right state of mind to give and receive feedback. And there's a lot of literature out there about feedback. Brene Brown writes a lot about feedback, but it really is a gift. And you take it and say thank you, and you use it to make your practices better. But when you are talking about either moving careers or talking yourself up, being able, feedback is so important in healthcare and beyond. So receiving feedback and giving feedback are both really important skills. Okay, being a subject matter expert, I think this is one that kind of flies under the radar because in healthcare or nursing or whatever you are, right? We don't really think of ourselves more as a generalist, right? Because it's just kind of we do it all. But thinking about like where are you an expert? And this is actually a title that I held. It was kind of in one of my in limbo positions, but subject matter experts are out there, right? You can work as a consultant. I worked as a review question writer for a big publication company. You can work with doing curriculum mapping, and it's a remote opportunity. So I just wanted to give you some background about what an SME does. But thinking about like where is your expertise or what can you really provide information on? So for me personally, it's critical care, but I also have little pockets of things, like, like we're saying, education, oral presentations, communication techniques. So really thinking about what am I an expert in and how does that transfer, right? Where is my knowledge base? What kind of analytical ability, what can I really do a deep dive into? What can I and what do I love to do a deep dive into, right? That's really, really important too, because if we're not loving what we're doing, it's like painful, right? So, what kind of problems do I love solving? That's really where you want to find your expertise and hone in on that. But also remember, and like, here's a little spoiler alert, right? It's okay to switch. So I'm talking all about my critical care and I'm a nurse, critical care, but I work in pediatrics right now. And that was a huge jump for me. But you can learn anything if you have that solid knowledge base. So don't forget that it's easy to switch, but having these transferable skills, and that's kind of how I made the switch. Is I said, yeah, sure, I know little to nothing about pediatrics, but I know a lot about other stuff. So that's how I kind of transitioned. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Another role I did as a nurse was I was a clinical specialist or basically a device rep. So this was my big transition into medical industry. And fully transparent, it took me a year to transition into industry, and it was a hard year. In that year, I hired an interview coach, a resume builder. I really, really beefed up my LinkedIn profile. Someone told me that I shouldn't even apply to industry jobs without 500 LinkedIn connections because the the company wants to buy your network, not you. So there was a lot of really, really hard nuggets of information for me that I had to swallow because this is business now. Okay. This is sales. This is a whole different realm that I wasn't used to, right? I just kept saying, I'm a nurse. I'm a nurse. And like, yes, but no. And this is really where the realization occurred to me that there's a lot of healthcare roles out there where you work with people that don't work in healthcare that really don't understand these transferable skills of healthcare. And this is where it became really, really apparent to me. I'll tell a quick story. I was on an interview and I was almost at my wit's end with interviewing because I was getting my resume was getting neglected a lot by AI, right? So you apply to a position, and if you don't have those certain keywords or exactly what they're looking for, it's not a human that's reading all of these applications. It's a computer, it scans it, they don't see it, you're automatically rejected. So I was really frustrated, but I finally got an interview. I was really excited, but I was really at my wit's end with the interviewing and application process. So I had a few people on the call, and they're hammering me with questions, many of them that didn't address any transferable skills or really who I was as a thinker, a person, or the role. They were very behavioral and they're very situational. So I wasn't in the best mood, and I had somebody ask me if I felt comfortable talking to physicians. And I was like, that's yes, of course, right? And I was so taken back by that question because I felt like that's all I've been doing for the past couple years. But h- the impression that I got was they were that the nurse comes in, takes vitals, and leaves the room, right? They don't know that side of nursing where we're the one in the room for the whole 12 hours. We're talking to everyone. We're really managing the care of the patient with the whole team. So my answer to him was I asked him if he's ever had to call a physician at 2 o'clock in the morning to tell them that the patient can't use the restroom, which is a real story, right? Who calls the doctor in the middle of the night to request the medication? It's the nurse, right? You have to wake someone up, but that's the advocacy, right? That's the communication, right? You're not going to call someone up and be rude in the middle of the night. You're going to call someone up and be apologetic but stern. And he was like, no, no, I've never had to do that. And I was like, okay, well, that's one of the roles. That's one of the ways you speak to a physician. So again, just understanding your strong points, your weak points too, but how these skills transfer. So getting back to the clinical specialist, the transition into industry was tough. I'm not going to lie about that. But when I did get in, it was really about selling the skills. And that's where I really learned how many transferable skills there were. But in this role, I learned a lot about business. I learned a lot about customer service and a lot about relationship building. We call them key opinion leaders or KOLs. And it's really about learning who those, I hate to use the word, but I'll use it, those influencers are in your field. Who are um, the big physicians that are talking about the products, and it's all about image and networking. So again, you have to be comfortable with change. There'd be times when I would be on assignment. Got sent to Fargo, North Dakota, and then told to come home, and then got sent back on a Thursday, and then got sent back to Fargo on a Monday. I ended up spending 2 weeks in Fargo, North Dakota. So a lot of travel, a lot of movement. But I saw a lot of really cool things, a lot of parts of the country I wouldn't have seen without it. Oh, and I put metrics on there. That's another thing that I learned, and another transferable skill, and that goes with the business acumen, right? So, are you meeting all of your goals? A lot of financials. That is a conversation that, as a nurse, you don't really have, and I never really learned. So, thinking about transferring into business and medical industry, those are key words that you definitely want to play up and use. And if you have that experience, that's awesome to really leverage as you're transitioning in. Okay, and then I think this is one of the last roles I'll talk about here, or second to last, but as a researcher, and I put this towards the end because this is another common thread that goes through. Because as a researcher, I said it's always about asking questions, always asking why, digging in, going deeper. Um, and that really transfers into project management, innovation, organization, learning the methods of something. And even though I have a background in research and I understand, maybe not everyone does, boiling it, like thinking about like we're all researchers in a sense, right? But it gives us that foundation of what questions to ask to manage a project better, to understand the team, to innovate. Is there a better way of doing something? How does somebody else do something? Can we talk to them, right? And all of these questions are essentially curiosity, right? So, not losing that curious component and going back into healthcare, right? We have to be curious as healthcare. It's like, why is that happening? What's going on with my patient? Who is that? Right? Who's who, right? So it's always having that curious nature about yourself, about the diagnosis, about the treatment plan, and not in a punitive way at all. It's really like, what else can I learn? How can I use this to better treat my patient, to make myself a better practitioner? Um, and I did put there as patients, because if we're talking about um, research and learning, right, it really is a slow burn. Um, Things happen quickly in health on one side of healthcare and very slowly on the other side. So, in my current role as a program coordinator, I also conduct research, but I more so coordinate the research. And to give you a sense of that slow burn, I'm not at the bedside anymore. I'm not thinking like, what's wrong with this patient? Let me take their temperature. Oh, they have a fever. Got my answer, right? I'm coordinating research studies that might last for years, right? We enroll patients and they might be in it for 5 years. So I might not see the payoffs for 5 years, but we're changing how medications are prescribed, how devices work. So we might not see it, but 10 years down the road, that might be the change. And that's that slow burn. But like I said, it was the whole, I jumped into a new practice area. So I'm now learning a whole different disease states. I'm learning whole different research protocols and language behind pediatric research. So that's been really fun for me. Like I said, it's a whole new world, and I'm still getting used to it. Um, but transferring those skills, it's all about learning new processes, regulatory. I now talk to the FDA on a regular basis. I've never had to do that before. But as you know, they respect you as a nurse, as a healthcare provider, because you have that clinical role, that language that you're able to, what will this patient need and how can you anticipate patient needs in this research study? So all of that type of nursing background has just fed into each role, and especially this one. And I put some transferable skills there. It's like determination and getting protocols through, understanding what motivates me is really important, especially working in the last couple roles I've worked in, because the oversight is not that much. So I've got to stay on top of my own projects, my own timelines, my own deadlines, and again, communication and teamwork. So all of these words, these are like buzzwords, right? But they should, if you're thinking about moving or, you know, advancing into a different kind of career role, these are words that you can use either on a resume or to describe yourself that aren't tasky healthcare words. So key takeaways here are to build your network. So really that LinkedIn profile, it's not talked a lot about, at least in nursing. I remember when I graduated, no one really talked up LinkedIn. That didn't happen until I made the transition into business and industry, but it is so valuable. Follow healthcare organizations that you're interested in. Follow big healthcare influencers, or like I said, those KOLs, key opinion leaders, like things. Be professional, obviously, but connect with people and send people messages. I have had such great experience with sending people a message and saying, "Hey, can you we get on the phone and have a conversation? How did you get into your position?" And people are so generous with their stories and so generous with their time. It's delightful, actually, and making those connections. And then when you're ready to move into an organization or move into a role, you look at those connections and you ask for a referral, or you look and you see, oh, this person works at this company. I wonder what they could tell me about it. And it's just that extra social network that you gain from having these conversations. It's so, so valuable. Listen and learn, right? Doing what you're doing exactly tonight. On our walks, right? Talk to someone and think about what career position are they in, healthcare or not, and what transferable skills do they have? Or what if I was in that role, if I wanted to apply for that job, what skills do I have that they don't, and what skills do they have that I don't? So thinking about things in skill based and transferring skills and thinking about those, well, down at the bottom there, those infinite goals, which we'll talk about. Staying up to date with your resume and quantifying your outcomes. Okay, big tip right there. So if you worked on a project, what was the outcome? Numbers are so important, especially in a business world. So if you worked on if you worked on a quality improvement project, how many and what was the outcome? Many times I'll review resumes and it's a lot of tasks that were done, but really there should be quantifiable outcomes. So if you did, like I said, if you worked on a quality improvement project, how many did you? How many improvements did you make? Because then it tells a more complete story than what you just did. And when you start to talk about those transferable skills, oh, I worked on 3 quality improvement projects where we, changed the practice of 5 nurses. Well, that's project management, right? That's communication, that's adaptability, that's innovation. So those words that I showed, that's how you can then expand upon them. practice interviewing. So it's, pretend you're always on an interview, basically. And then that goes hand in hand with that next bullet, the STAR technique. When you're telling a story, use the STAR technique. Now I'm in a position where I interview people and someone starts off so strong and it's such a great story. And then it just keeps going and going and going. It's like, where is the story going? Right. So if you think about what is the situation, what was the task? Sorry, my Alexa's talking for some reason. I'm not quite sure. Okay. What is the task? What is the action? And what was the result? So telling it in that. Hold on. Echo, turn off. Okay, I tried to ignore it. We couldn't. So using that situation, task, action, result technique. So, the situation was I'm doing a present. So I was doing a presentation, everything was going great. And then all of a sudden my Alexa device started talking and I knew I needed to turn it off. So I paused myself and I asked my device to please turn off. And as a result, I was able to finish. Boom. Right. So it's a way to kind of it's a communication technique, but it's a way that you tell the story very, very effectively. So that's a great technique. And then again, you are more than just a whatever you are. And I hope you see that, right? So describing yourself in more qualities rather than tasks allows yourself to explode into a marketable, a sellable, whatever you want to be, but describe yourself in qualities rather than tasks. And then finite versus infinite goals, that's Simon Sinek. He's another big thinker, big speaker. But when you think about finite goals, there's always something more to achieve, right? You go on, you get the job, and then there's the promotion, and then there's the next promotion, and then there's the next title. And it's like that for me personally, that caused my own burnout. And it's like, what's next? What's next? What's next? Versus infinite goals, which are those more quality based goals. So I want to, I love the question when people ask me, like, where do you want to be in 5 years? That kind of question. Because I now answer, I want to be happy or I want to be fulfilled in whatever role I am. Like, I'm not going to attach myself to a position or a title or whatever. It's more of those qualities that are more fulfilling for me. And I'm going to use the position that I'm in to get to that infinite goal, because then I can just blossom and bloom from that infinite goal. So again, that's a Simon Sinek thing. He has great talks and he has great strategic techniques to get to those infinite goals. So I'll leave you with this slide. It's not what are you, but it's who will you be? And I want you to think about that, because that's again that you're more than just a laundry list of tasks. It's really who you are and how you can maximize the skills you already have. So thank you. And we have like 10 minutes. So I'm gonna minimize this so I could see who's here. And if anyone has any questions or comments, I'm happy to take them.
You did really good, Susan.
Oh, thank you.
You did. You were very thorough. And I love how you were able to basically go down your timeline of experience and extract what was developed in you and apply that every time you move forward. You could use a little bit more and a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And then here you are today as a coordinator, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I really do. Thanks for giving me the platform.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here. Oh my gosh.
Thanks everyone for being here.
Yeah.
I have a lot
Oh.
of questions. So if other people have some, I don't want to like hog time. Okay.
No, please use the time. This
Yes.
is for you.
Okay. First one, do you think having the PhD versus a clinical doctorate gave you a little bit more wiggle room in terms of employment opportunities?
Yes. Yes, to be honest. And
Yeah.
I did have that PhD DNP, and I never took advanced pharmacology. I'm not a nurse practitioner. I have a straight PhD, and that was actually advised to me by who told me to get a PhD, because she said, if you ever want to switch out of nursing, it's a general PhD. Yes, my concentration is nursing, but it's not it's not a DNP, it's not a specific nursing degree. So,
Mm-hmm.
and now in the role that I'm in, I'm working with physicians, and I'm working with people that aren't in nursing, but it's still the research process that doesn't change. Versus if it was a clinical degree, I would be more so working with clinicians.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have contact with people who are more on the clinical doctorate route who have been able to branch out of just, like day-to-day staff care?
People who have a DNP.
A DMP, well, I personally have a DPT.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking more like what's next outside of just being a staff therapist, like what
Mhm.
opportunities are out there?
Yeah, I absolutely. And I think thinking about what you do and where you want to go, and again, using those transferable skills. I don't think that having a terminal degree is a huge accomplishment, right? And I think it's okay, so what have you done? And it's more so where you want to go, and it's how you
Mhm.
spin it, right? So thinking about where you want to go, that's like the first decision, but I have seen all sorts of avenues happen. So yeah, you are not limited. You're
Mhm.
actually very unlimited by that. That's awesome.
That's good to know.
Hmm.
Another thing is with the clinical side of things. I love what I do, and I've met a lot of, PTs, OTs, speech nurses who love what they do, but it
Hmm.
feels like the healthcare system puts you in this box where you're not able to really practice how you want or perform how you want, and it kind of takes the excitement out of the field. What during your times of advocacy and advising, what advice do you give to people on how to, still be engaged, but not let the system itself and the
Yeah.
industry kind of keep you down?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And because I talk about creativity, and I say did the creative writing journal, and I write creatively. And it's like, when you're at the bedside of a patient, that's not the time to be creative. Like, we have
Hmm.
policies and protocols for a reason, right? And you get that. So it's, where do you find that creativity? And
Hmm.
there's, sometimes we'll say, like, oh, it's the art of nursing. So it's little things. It's like dressing a wound, it's bandage care, it's talking to patients, it's how do you encourage patients to be creative, it's how does the speech therapist work. So it's, there's little things that aren't so black and white that you can kind of bend, and it's really that individualization of patient care, right? Because what
Hmm.
works for one patient certainly will not work for the other, and you'll come in with this plan and be like, I saw this work, this is going to be great, and the patient's like, nope, I'm not doing it that
Hmm.
way. Right. And sometimes you have to abandon your plan and think about something different. And it's like, okay, so that's where the creativity comes in. And that's where the talking to different patients comes in, and talking to your coworkers comes in, and kind of exploring a little bit. But I hear you. And that's a frustration in healthcare, because you're like, we're so limited, but for a good reason. Right.
Right.
Mhm.
Oh, thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Susan, do you have any advice on how to improve in the area of problem solving and goal setting?
In what way?
So I'm an entrepreneur, and I am a speech pathologist,
Hmm.
and I have a company, but in the therapy world, but I've already diversified some from the actual treatment, but
Hmm.
now I want to be able to do more like what you're talking about. And just looking at some of the skills you were talking about, I think problem solving and goal setting is kind of general to all of it.
Hmm.
So how would you say, like, what were some ways to kind of improve on areas that you may see as things that you could sharpen?
Yeah. I think getting into your population and almost doing a needs assessment, right? So talking to people and saying like, where are your pain points? So you can go after those first because there's so many people out there. You might think like, and again, it's that prioritization. What you think is an issue and a priority might not be the priority of your audience. So it really starts with doing a good needs assessment and understanding what your, and I'll call them audience. It could be patients, it could be customers, right? If you're doing a business, and really understanding the priorities and the needs of those people, and then building from there.
Okay. Okay. And were there any like resources that you feel like helped you a lot within those areas?
Mhm. Um,
Like
like
you
book.
mentioned Brene Brown, for instance, for the feedback. Um,
Oh yeah, sure.
yeah.
Um, you know what? If we can we connect and then I'll give you like a whole
Yeah.
list because
Yeah.
I wanted some time to put that together.
Sure. Thank you.
Because I have a lot of resources and I know we're recording this for other
Yeah.
people, but what we
Yeah.
can do is I can put together a list of speakers and books and
Okay.
resources and maybe put it in the Discord
That
and
would
then we
be
can
amazing.
access that.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that you touched on LinkedIn because as you were talking in your presentation, I was thinking of LinkedIn and how I
Mhm.
keep hearing people talking about it, professionals talking about it, and I definitely have not really tapped into that. Like I have a LinkedIn, but I know it's so powerful. People are saying,
Mhm.
"Yeah, you have to update it. You have to," because companies are reaching out, they're looking
Mhm.
at your LinkedIn, and mine is just older and not up to date, and I'm not
Mhm.
utilizing those skills that you mentioned in your presentation.
Yeah, recruiters are on there. People will find jobs through there. It's so powerful at this point. And it's so easy. Once you get it, and that's another business avenue in itself. People will say, "Oh, I'll update your LinkedIn profile for you." So, it's very lucrative, and you can find, like I said, job opportunities. You can promote your business on there. You can promote yourself. You can network with people. It's very, very, very valuable. I can't stress that enough.
Thank you. This was so
Mhm.
helpful. Thank you, Susan.
Oh, you're welcome. I'll stay in touch, definitely.
All right. I just want to say thank you again. There was a point in there where I can relate to you and some of the work that you do because I'm not in healthcare at all, but I've learned a lot about you guys today and what you do. You know, the transferable skills that I can kind of relate to. But my job currently is at Duke Energy, so I interview subject matter experts.
Oh, sure.
So
Yeah.
when you put on there, like I call it a SME, right?
Sneeze. Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
But other than that, you did say one other thing that stood out to me that I thought was really cool and interesting. You said people don't buy you, they buy your network.
Hmm.
That was powerful.
Mm.
That was really powerful. That just taps into, you really have to be cognizant about who you're spending or who you're surrounding yourself with, and also make sure that they're in alignment with your overall goal
Hmm.
and direction in life. You know what I mean? You definitely want to have the
Absolutely.
right support around you. So
Hmm.
those were the points that stood out to me. And then one of the last ones was the slow burn with a great payoff. I love that.
Absolutely. It's patience, right? Because it's that instant gratification that we love. Who doesn't love that, right? But man, that slow burn when it pays off, that feels really good.
Ooh. And
Susan, can I ask you another quick question? I hope it's quick, just really quick.
Sure, absolutely.
Um, so you can have a resume, right, catered to the position that you're looking for,
Hmm.
like the right keywords and all of that, depending on the type of position. So
Hmm.
what about LinkedIn? Like, is LinkedIn can it be too all over the place? Can it be too scattered? Can you have too many like keywords, quote unquote, in there that if a certain position, maybe you're trying to outsource to a couple different, two,
Hmm.
three, four different types of positions. And if the employer goes there and it's like all over the place, there's so many things,
Hmm.
is that a negative or how do you
So
respond to that?
LinkedIn is more so the resume really should be catered to the position that you're applying for versus LinkedIn is more you as an individual, right? It's like you have a headline, you have your work history, but it's not specific in the way that for a position. It's much more broad. And it also gives you the opportunity to showcase a lot of things that aren't on your resume. So you can upload different activities you've been involved with. There's a lot of different categories on your LinkedIn. So it is a little bit more scattered than than your resume. But I don't even want to use the word scattered. I'll just say it's more broad. And that's
If
okay. And people
if
want to
I,
see that.
I kind of want to add to that for my
Yes,
LinkedIn,
please.
something that I had to recently, well, not even probably in the past year, what I recently did on my LinkedIn was I obviously added the work that I do today. I wrote out a really good explanation, but there's a bio section and a description section, which is actually in alignment with the true vision, the thing that I really want to do, which is to be a speaker and do what we are doing here.
Mhm.
And I put it in there that I wanted to speak on topics such as how to cultivate a healthy relationship with your professional life, to reignite that passion in people and to get them back into alignment with their purpose or their, all of that stuff. And I decided to write out my own little dialogue,
Mhm.
and it's attracted people just by that. People will speak to me just on that alone. And then beneath that, you'll see what I'm currently actively doing in my 9 to 5 or whatever you want to call it job.
Absolutely.
So you can kind of take advantage of the platform, and depending on who you want to attract, I would just be very intentional about who and what you're attracting to you.
That's great advice. And
Yeah.
you also keep in mind that LinkedIn, you can have like you could do courses and you could put your achievements on there and you can really because again, first and foremost, it's a social network, right? So if you think about it's more of a profile and on there, you're highlighting certain things about yourself, right? You're not posting a ton of pictures. It's not like that kind of thing, but it is a social network and it's a way for people to connect to you.
Yep. Well, if that is everything, Susan and Hillary, you guys can obviously connect.
Mhm.
Hillary is not under Hillary on Discord though.
Okay.
So that's the thing is like we were messaging and then she was like, "Oh, by the way, that was me." Um,
Well, I'm under Susan, so if you want to find me, go ahead and shoot me a message. I'm happy to, chat or find me on the walks. I come to the
Okay,
walks.
thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. Ladies. Thank you so much for joining, Susan. You did amazing. The recording will get saved to the email. It'll be in the Google Drive. And
Great.
my goal is to package these up and save them on a private YouTube channel for us.
That's
So we can
awesome.
always reference them, build that up, and keep growing and getting better here.
And I'll make a list of resources for goal setting and good speakers that I like. Adam Grant is another one that I really like. So I'll put a whole bunch of names in the TED Talks together and stuff.
Sounds awesome. Thank you
Great.
for joining,
Thank you
ladies.
so
Thank you
much.
so
It was
much, Susan.
incredible.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
Chat soon.
Bye.
Bye.